What if what we've been calling personality is just a set of patterns we've been rehearsing for years? And if that's true, if identity is something we reinforce, not just something we are, then that means it's also something we can deliberately reshape. Maybe you know this feeling. You keep second-guessing decisions even after they've worked out fine. Or you tell yourself you're not a finisher, that you're great at starting things, but terrible at following through and getting across the finish line. Or maybe you've built something genuinely impressive, whether that's a business, a career, a team, and yet you can still walk into certain rooms wondering when someone's going to figure out that you don't actually belong there. And here's the part that we don't talk about enough. Whatever your internal messaging is, you've probably said some version of it so many times that they've stopped feeling like thoughts and now have started to feel like facts. That is the problem we're solving in today's video. And the solution is far more specific than most people realize. But that specificity is needed to help you rebuild your identity in a way that serves you instead of holds you back. I'm Dr. Laura Miner, a certified and credentialed leadership coach, and my work is about just one thing, helping you develop your inner leader for outer impact. And today, that means getting honest about the identity patterns running your leadership without your permission. So in this video, we're going to break down the science that explains why this happens, and you're going to walk away with a 3-step framework that helps you identify one pattern that's been quietly running the show, choose the right self-leadership strategy to interrupt it, and run a 7-day experiment so you see actual evidence of how you're disrupting the patterns and rebuilding your identity. That's right, evidence. Because declarations don't shift identity, evidence does. So stay with me because the science behind this is more surprising than you might expect. To give you a little bit of context, I want to tell you about a pattern that I had to confront during my dissertation research. Now, I've always been the person who prepares thoroughly, sometimes excessively. I called it diligence. I called it caring about quality. And those things were true to an extent, but somewhere deep in that research process, reading hundreds of pages on self-leadership, interviewing business owners about their own patterns, I had to sit with a much harder question. Was some of my preparation actually protection? Was it a way of feeling in control before stepping into something that was so uncertain? That's not a comfortable thing to discover about yourself when you're literally writing a dissertation on self-leadership. But that moment, that very uncomfortable insight, that is where the real work started. Because I had to stop protecting a version of myself that I had long outgrown. And that's when it really hit me. Our identities, they're like playlists that we've had on repeat for so long, we forget that they're even playing. It just runs like background music, becoming the soundtrack of your life. That is, until you realize that you have a choice and you can change the music and choose differently. Now, here's where a lot of well-intentioned people get stuck, and I mean really stuck, despite doing serious inner work. Research published in Frontiers in Psychology looked at what actually predicts leadership emergence. And what they found was a chain, a very specific sequence. You see, self-awareness alone does not make you a more effective leader. Self-awareness has to move through self-leadership and then through self-efficacy before it translates into leadership emergence, where you experience stronger performance and start to see evidence of what you're capable of. So if you've been journaling and doing the inner work and reading every book, and you're still wondering why things aren't shifting, here's what you need to know. Awareness without self-leadership is a dead end. You're watching yourself do the same things, think the same thoughts, feel the same feelings, so nothing changes. It all just stays the same. And this is why self-leadership is so very important, because it's the bridge between knowing and becoming. So the question isn't just, who am I? The question is, what have I been habitually practicing? And what am I going to do about it to create a different result? That is where the identity rebuild experiment comes in. But before we dive into it, if using self-leadership science to actually shift identity and not just think about it is resonating with you, hit that subscribe button. I release new content on the science of self-leadership every week, and I'd love to have you with me on this journey. Okay, the experiment. And I'm using the word experiment deliberately. You see, one of the most striking findings in my PhD research was that every single business owner I studied engaged in consistent, intentional experimentation. All of them. It wasn't a personality trait, it was an actual practice. Experimentation meant testing new approaches, sitting with uncertainty, and learning from what surfaced, all without needing the answers up front. So that's the spirit we're bringing into this. You're not declaring a new personality, you're running a short experiment to see what becomes possible when you stop letting the playlist continue on repeat and instead make some new selections. And the experiment happens in 3 simple steps. Step 1, pattern labeling. I want you to finish this sentence. I'm the kind of person who always, and write down whatever comes to mind. Whether you're the kind of person who always overthinks before they act, shrinks when they feel like the least experienced person in the room, abandons their plans when things get hard, whatever it is, write it down, because that's your default playlist. One thing that I do want to mention, that pattern, while it may not be serving you right now, it probably made sense at some point. It protected you or supported you in some real way in the past. So it's important that we don't shame it or beat ourselves up for it. We just want to see it clearly enough that we can work with it. Which brings us to step 2, choose your lever. Self-leadership gives us 3 pillars to consider: how you think, how you act, and how you motivate yourself. And the right intervention depends on the right diagnosis. So I have an important question for you. What's behind your default playlist? Is it a thinking problem, an action problem, or a motivation problem? Which of those 3 levers do you need to pull? If you keep rehearsing a belief that isn't serving you, something like, I'm not a finisher, then that's a thinking problem. And one of the best ways to impact a thinking problem is to examine the belief behind it, replace the internal script, and then mentally rehearse a different outcome. In fact, it's funny because as I'm saying this, I'm thinking about a client who had been telling themselves for years that they weren't decisive. But we didn't start by working on decision-making frameworks to address their perceived problem, because that would have been premature. Instead, we worked on the story that showed up before every decision was made, because that was their thinking lever. Okay, now, if you know what to do, but you keep defaulting to old behaviors, so you set a goal, but you don't follow through, then that is an action problem. And the lever here is behavioral. So one thing you can do is add environmental cues that make the new behavior easier to choose than the old one. So as an example, let's say you know you need to start your day sooner so that you're not stressed out and running behind from the moment you wake up. A good behavioral lever here would be moving your alarm clock across the room so that you're actually forced to get out of bed when it goes off. Because when you create environmental cues, you're essentially redesigning the conditions around the pattern, so the new behavior becomes the path of least resistance. Okay, the third and final lever. If you're clear on who you want to become, but you're lacking the energy and drive to step into that person, that's usually a motivation problem. And the lever there is finding what's genuinely rewarding about the experience for you. In other words, what's the internal pull or the sense of purpose that exists in the doing, not just the eventual outcome? I know this sounds so cliche, but the evidence is there. When you are energized by the journey, the destination really does take care of itself. So that's it. Choose one pattern and just one lever, either how you think, how you act, or how you motivate yourself. And even though you might be tempted to work on everything all at once, resist it. Because a focused experiment will give you real data, while a scattered one will just lead to confusion and exhaustion. I promise you. Okay, so step 3, the third step in the identity rebuild experiment is the actual experiment itself. So for the next 7 days, I want you to kick off each morning by asking yourself, what would someone who is becoming this version of themselves do today? I don't want you taking massive action and flipping your world on its head. That's not what this is about. This is truly just about experimenting with something small, practical, and actionable that can help you create evidence around the new identity you're stepping into. Because here's the thing, identity doesn't shift through declarations. We've all made those, right? Starting Monday, I'm going to be different. But we all know how those go. No, identity shifts through evidence. Small, repeated actions that start to tell a different story, both to you and about you. That evidence proves the experiment is worth practicing again and again. And as you do, new habits are being created to support your identity. And before you know it, you're replacing the old internal playlist with a new, more empowering one. The evidence becomes your new self-talk. The new self-talk becomes your new belief, and the new belief becomes your new identity. Now, is 7 days going to completely shift your identity? Probably not, but it is enough to start generating real data. And that real data over time will lead to your eventual big change. Before you dive into the experiment, there's just one thing that I want to caution you about. People often treat identity change like a willpower project. They think they have to push through or grind it out, and that can work for a while. But here's what my dissertation research revealed about business owners with a long-term track record of success. The self-leadership factor they all scored high on, with almost no variance between them, was focusing on natural rewards. In other words, the ability to find intrinsic value in the doing part right now, not in the eventual outcome someday down the road. So what does that mean for you? It means your experiment should feel worth doing today. So ask yourself, where's the natural pull in this experiment? What part of it genuinely energizes you? Then lead yourself through the experiment from that place. That is what turns a 7-day experiment into a new way of being. Here's what I want to leave you with as you go into your experiment. You can label the pattern. You can choose the lever. You can start creating evidence. But that doesn't mean the old soundtrack will just magically go away. It's going to want you to replay the old hits. This is exactly why you should watch this video next, which is all about the self-talk running underneath your behavior and the self-leadership strategies that let you rewrite it at the source. It's not what most people expect, but it is what most people need. And you can check it out here.